Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS Academy. In this session of the top topics of the week, we'll delve into 5 most important topics from the Hindu and the Indian Express. So let's explore each topic in depth so that you're well informed and prepared for the examination. So let's kick off with the first topic.
That is ISRO to sign off 2024 with space docking experiment mission today. So here we'll be discussing about the Spadex mission of ISRO. What do you mean by space docking and how it is going to help in India's scientific advancements in the future? What are the countries which actually possess this particular technology and few of its historical background and the characteristic features. Okay, so here we'll be discussing about this particular concept of space docking, very important. And moving forward, the Spadex mission actually becomes very important for our prelims examination. And here, this is important for prelims, as I told you, current events of national and international importance, and also under space technology under GS paper 3. Okay. So now let us actually move forward in looking at the previous year questions. So in 2016, there has been a previous year questions in the prelims. Okay, so there has been a question in the prelims with respect to the Mangalyaan, which has actually been launched by ISRO. So these launches as well as missions by ISRO, as well as the payloads, the capacity, all that becomes very important, whether the satellites have actually gone to the geostationary orbit or the low earth orbit, etc., or GTO, all that becomes very important. Now let us actually move forward in order to see why this particular Spadex mission is actually in news. So today ISRO is actually going to launch the groundbreaking Spadex, that actually stands for Space Docking Experiment, Spadex. Okay, so ISRO is going to launch the Spadex mission aboard the PSLV C-60, that is the polar satellite launch vehicle. C-60 is going to carry this particular payloads, and marking this is the nation's first in-space docking technology demonstration. Let us actually understand what do you mean by this docking technology. Okay, so docking technology or space docking. So this is nothing but it is a process of connecting two separate spacecraft. Okay, for example, in order to carry out certain missions, or for example, in order to send the astronauts to space, what happens is that we need to send, or we need to send repeated launches. We need to launch repeated launches. The rocket actually has to carry the satellites there, then these astronauts will go there, and then what happens, this process called docking actually takes place. Docking is what? It is connecting the two separate spacecraft in a particular orbit, okay, in order to form a single operational unit. And this is actually very essential for carrying out very specific missions, for example, to study about the surface of the earth or other surface of the moon, etc. So here it is nothing but connecting two spacecraft in an orbit in order to make it as a single operational unit, and this actually involves very complex maneuvers. Okay, that is, there are two spacecrafts. One spacecraft is actually called as the chaser, and that approaches another spacecraft called as the target. So for example, let's say this is the chaser and this is actually the target. So one spacecraft actually approaches another in order to get attached, okay, and that process is called as space docking. And now together this becomes one operational or single operational unit, okay, and this actually helps in achieving a rigid connection. So one spacecraft approaches another to align, to dock, and to achieve a rigid connection, and this is essential for the missions that require multiple launches to complete certain objectives. What is it? For example, if Sunita Williams actually has to go to space, what happens is that there is a satellite that is actually operating in space, or you have this International Space Station, okay, to take them to the space and actually enable them to connect it in order to form one single operational unit. This is actually required. So here, transferring the crew, assembling the space stations, and also refueling purposes, resupplying the resources, and also interplanetary missions, that is studying about the other planets. For all this, the space docking actually happens to be a very useful technology. Moving forward, SpaceX actually the Spadex, that is I told you, space docking experiment. This actually demonstrates indigenous autonomous space docking. There is no need for manual operations. Okay, there is no need for humans to come out and then have to attach these two spacecrafts, because it is autonomous, that is automatic. There is automatic indigenous technology that is completely run and developed and launched by India only. And this mission actually has small spacecrafts, that is I told you, the Chaser SDX-01, as well as the Target. That is, Chaser will move towards the target and actually gets interconnected. So this target is SDX-02, and it has actually been carried by this particular launch vehicle, that is PSLV C60, into a 470 kilometer low earth orbit. That is, orbit will be LEO, very very important, and the precise docking speed will be around 28,000 kilometer per hour, and then it forms a single orbiting entity. Okay, so already there's a spacecraft that will be orbiting in an orbit. The second one goes here and attaches itself, then it actually becomes one full entity, and then it actually orbits. Okay, this is very vital for India's future ambitions also as a space power, like for example launching Gaganyaan. Okay, that is this human space flight, as well as interplanetary missions and development of an indigenous space station, that is nothing but Bharatiya Antariksha Station. Now moving forward, let's see what are the key features and maneuvers of this particular SpadeX mission. So number one, autonomous, autonomous docking is actually done, because the spacecraft automatically can navigate, can approach, and can attach securely with each other, and there is a seamless coordination. Also, the formation flying. What do you mean by formation flying? It is actually there is a precise orbital control. Okay, there is precise control in order to maintain the relative positions, and it is actually a critical skill in space assembly as well as the satellite servicing, because you need to actually follow that particular spacecraft in that particular orbit at that particular speed. That is very very important. Next, there are remote operations, that is, one spacecraft actually controls the altitude control system of the other. Okay, this is also very very important. And also there is use of robotic arms for in space manipulation as well as servicing. Now moving forward, how is it significant for India? Because with this technology, India is actually going to join the elite club, that is US, Russia, as well as China, which are the only countries which have actually done this space docking. So it's going to advance the space capabilities of India, as it will be the fourth country following US, Russia, as well as China. And following this, it's going to help in India's future space explorations like Gaganyaan for human spaceflight, Chandrayaan-4 for lunar sample returns, and next one, there is actually going to be a setting up of permanent infrastructure in the outer space, and finally future interplanetary missions such as the mission to Mars, etc. What is going to be the further impact is that it's going to create opportunities for international collaboration in building the space infrastructure, and also to advance the deep space exploration, and also engage with the other countries. Okay,
What is the title? The title is Sheikh Hasina Extradition Demand India's Options, right? So, in this article, we'll understand about the Indian Extradition Act of 1962. We are not going to understand the other, let's say, peripheral issues. We'll focus on the Extradition Act. What exactly is extradition? Extradition, and you can map this under prelims and mains, right? So, in GS paper 2, we have international relations. You can mark this under international relations, right? So, this was a question asked in the year 2021. Refugees should not be turned back to the country where they would face persecution or human right violation. Examine these statements with reference to ethical dimension being violated by the nation claiming to be democratic with open society. So, what is the context? See, you all know that Sheikh Hasina government in Bangladesh was criticized by the people. there were protests led by the students, which led to Sheikh Hasina, the former Prime Minister of Bangladesh. She was forced to leave the country. So Sheikh Hasina was forced to leave the country and then she flew to India. Now the government, the interim government of Bangladesh, has accused Sheikh Hasina of committing crime against humanity. Bangladesh, the interim government says that or states that Sheikh Hasina has committed crime against humanity, she has committed genocide and she has to face trial in Bangladesh. And that's the reason Bangladesh government has requested Indian government to extradite Sheikh Hasina back to Bangladesh. She is in India. Bangladesh is requesting India to send Sheikh Hasina back to Bangladesh. Now the ball is in India's court. This is the context. But what exactly is extradition? Let us try to understand. Now what is extradition? Extradition is a process where one nation requests the other nation to send back a wanted person in this country back to this country. Let's say, for example, here in the context of India and Bangladesh, extradition refers to a process where the Bangladesh government has requested to India the extradition of Bangladesh wanted person, that is Sheikh Hasina, back to Bangladesh. Bangladesh or the people of Bangladesh feel that Sheikh Hasina has committed crime against humanity and she has to undergo legal process. She has to undergo legal process and if found guilty, she should be punished. Right? Which means now the court cases in Bangladesh, or let's say the trial, can be conducted only, it can also be conducted without Sheikh Hasina, but as she is wanted in Bangladesh. Why? Because she has committed crime. Bangladesh has requested India to extradite Sheikh Hasina back to Bangladesh. Just as India has requested UK to extradite Vijay Mallya. Vijay Mallya, the former owner of RCB IPL team, back to India. Right? Now, see the extradition. I hope you understood what is extradition. The extradition in a country is governed by the Indian Extradition Act of 1962. This is the act. See, extradition doesn't mean that a country is requesting India and we send the person back. No. This is a particular act that governs, that facilitates the extradition to and from India. So there are certain rules mentioned under this act or provisions which we'll discuss, through which extradition can be facilitated. This is one process. The second one is the principle of aut dideo aut judice, which means this principle essentially means that under the international customary law, a country is obligated to extradite a person back, or a country will be under a compulsion sort of to extradite a person back to the country that has requested for the extradition, which means this particular principle says that when Bangladesh is requesting Sheikh Hasina because she has committed crime in Bangladesh, India should, this is a customary law, India should extradite Sheikh Hasina back to Bangladesh. However, India is not legally bound to extradite Sheikh Hasina, but this is a principle. Now we'll focus on this particular act. Now, Section 2, Subclause D of this particular Act, Indian Extradition Act of 1962. Indian Extradition Act of 1962, Section 2, Subclause D of this Act defines extradition treaty. It defines extradition treaty. Now, what is extradition treaty? It is nothing but, let's say, a treaty or agreement between India and, let's say, a foreign nation, India and a foreign nation, for extraditing fugitive criminals. Fugitive are the ones who, like for example, Vijay Mallya. For India, Vijay Mallya is a fugitive criminal because he has committed a crime in a country and he has escaped the laws of our country. Similarly, Sheikh Hasina has committed a crime in Bangladesh and has escaped the law of that country and has flown to India. So she is a fugitive in Bangladesh. Vijay Mallya is a fugitive for our country. Vijay Mallya, or let's say Lalit Modi, not Narendra Modi. Okay. So now these are some principles under the Indian Extradition Act. One, the extradition applies only to offences listed in the treaty. So whenever a treaty is signed between India and other nation, for example, India has signed this treaty with 40 nations, with 40 countries. So India has a treaty with 40 nations. Now, which are the offences mentioned in the treaty? Right, which means the extradition applies only to offences. For example, let's say India signed a treaty with Maldives, and in that treaty, murder is not an offense. Let's say, then a person cannot be extradited for murder. Second, the principle of dual criminality. What is dual criminality? Which means, let's say, if murder is a crime in India and let's say murder is also a crime in Maldives, then this treaty is applicable. The principle of dual criminality. Let's say India signed an extradition treaty with Saudi Arabia. Now, let's assume rape is not a crime in Saudi Arabia, but it's a crime in India. Which means the principle of dual criminality says that the offense has to be a crime in both the countries. Now, as rape is not a crime in Saudi Arabia, let's assume this extradition treaty won't be applicable. Third, the requested country must confirm a prima facie case, which means Bangladesh has to submit a prima facie evidence, has to show evidence that Sheikh Hasina has committed a crime. Next, extradition must be granted solely for the requested offense. Which is the offense that a person has committed? It should be, extradition should be requested only for the requested offense, and the individual must be guaranteed a fair trial. Which means when a person is sent back, the person or that country should promise the other country that the trial will be fair, it will not be biased. Which means Bangladesh has to assure India that when Sheikh Hasina gets back to Bangladesh, the trial, the judicial process will be fair. Which are the other provisions? Extradition offences applies to crimes punishable under both Indian and the requesting state laws, that is principle of dual criminality. Extradition is typically based on the treaties outlining specific conditions, role of the central government. Now here, it is the central government who decides if Sheikh Hasina should be extradited back to Bangladesh. The central government becomes the commanding position or commanding authority to decide cases with respect to extradition. And what is the process? A formal request is submitted by the foreign country, Bangladesh, to India. The request is examined by the Ministry of External Affairs. Very important. And if satisfied, if India is satisfied, the accused is presented before a magistrate who assesses the evidence. The individual may be detained pending the final decision on extradition. This process is not required. Now, this is what you need to remember. These are the other provisions. Double jeopardy, which means double punishment. It ensures individuals are not tried or punished for the same offence twice. A person, this again is a provision under Article 20 of the Indian Constitution. A person cannot be committed twice for the same offence. Let's say a person has committed a crime, murder, the punishment is 5 years. The person will not be punished again for the same crime. So, let's say a person has committed murder. This 5 years rigorous imprisonment. Now, after completion of 5 years, the person will not be again sent back to prison. There is no double jeopardy. That is, there is protection of double jeopardy under the Evidence Act. Then denies extradition for political offences if there is risk of persecution. Now, the extradition can be because of political reasons, right? So, these are some of the provisions. Now, as I told you, it is the Ministry of External Affairs who oversees the extradition request. For example, the Consular, Passport and Visa Division. These are the divisions in the Ministry of External Affairs. Now, these are the divisions that oversees the request of the extradition made by a foreign country. So, this is another important point. Now, as I told you, India has signed extradition treaties with 40 countries. These are some of the examples of some of the countries with whom India has signed extradition treaty. Now, we'll understand the challenges. I hope you understood what is the Indian Extradition Act of 1962. It is nothing but it is an act which facilitates the extradition requests to and from India. Simple. So, challenges, legal and diplomatic complexities. Now, the extradition is not as simple as it may sound. For example, India has been requesting the extradition of Lalit Modi and Vijay Mallya, right, for so many years. There are legal challenges, right, then diplomatic considerations, right, then political sensitivities. Now, for example, India had a great relation with Sheikh Hasina. Now, given the good relation India has maintained with Sheikh Hasina for so long, for so many years, India will definitely take into consideration the affiliation of India with Bangladesh or Sheikh Hasina's Awami League in Bangladesh before deciding on do anything. Which means that the political factors play a very important role. And then legal appeals often prolong extradition proceedings. Now, these are some of the global framework for extradition. This is something which you can read by your very own. These are the 3 global framework for extradition. For example, the first one is United Nations Model Treaty on Extradition. Now, this provides guidelines for bilateral or multilateral extradition agreements. It covers serious crimes recognized by both states. So, this is nothing but one and the same that we discussed. Just here to remember the global framework for extradition. Please try to remember these few global frameworks. Then we'll understand the role of International Criminal Court. Now, one thing that you need to remember, it's a criminal court. ICC is a criminal court. India is not a member of International Criminal Court, but Bangladesh is a member of International Criminal Court. Right, now let's try to understand the role of ICC. Right, we just have discussed that Bangladesh is a party to the Rome Statute. Now, Rome Statute established ICC. Now, crimes against humanity fall under the ICC's jurisdiction based on material, personal, territorial and temporal criteria. Again, this is not important. Now, the ICC acts as a court of last resort and intervenes only when domestic jurisdiction fail to conduct fair trials. The ICC will step into picture only when the domestic laws are exhausted, which means, let's say for example, Sheikh Hasina is extradited back to Bangladesh, and let's say the trial has not been fair. Only in such case, only let's say for example, Myanmar has committed atrocities against, let's say, Rohingyas. Now, if the proceedings, judicial proceedings, if ICC feels that the judicial proceedings in Myanmar are not fair, then ICC acts as a court of last resort, which means as the last court of appeal, ICC will enter into picture. So, if Bangladesh proceedings against Sheikh Hasina lack independence or impartiality, the ICC prosecutor could initiate a examination under 15 of the Rome Statute. So, this is the second topic. I hope you understood. The most important dimension of this second article was to understand the Indian Extradition Act of 1962.
Again, this is a small criticism regarding uh, the UN environment summits. 4 UN environment summits happened in 2024 related to different areas. Okay, so what happened? Why these summits fell short in 2024? So that is being explored in this particular article. Obviously, it will be coming in the section environment in GS paper 3. Okay, so we'll be discussing what are the outcomes of this and why it was opposed. Okay, related to that particular summit, and related to the origin of that particular summit and what happened during this 2024 summit, why it was opposed. This will also be like a snippet. Okay, we'll see a previous year question related to this. Describe the major outcomes of the 26th session of Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. What are the commitments made by India in this conference? Again, this was asked related to UNFCCC. Okay, UNFCCC is also one of the summits which happened in 2024, which was mentioned in this article. Okay. All right. So context is 2024 four major UN environment summits happened. One related to climate change, another one related to biodiversity, another one related to land degradation, and another one related to plastic pollution. Okay, so all these summits concluded without achieving the meaningful progress. All the summits had a aim, okay, but that aim was not that didn't happen. Okay, underscoring the deep divisions between developed and developing nations. So this is what the article is talking about. Okay, all right, we'll see the summits. First one, UN Conference on Biological Diversity. UN Conference on Biological Diversity, or CBD. Okay, regarding the origin of this origin of this particular conference, so it originated in the 1992 Earth Summit. We call it as a Rio Summit, or the Rio Earth Summit. So in that many conferences happen. For example, the UNFCCC. UNFCCC was also one of the UNCCD regarding desertification, that is also there. So these are some of the important conference which came as part of that, and UNCBD is one among that. Okay, so what was the focus of that? To conserve biodiversity and securing financing for the sustainable land use. So that was one of the major provisions of this UNCBD. Okay, UNCBD. And this year the COP16 that happened in Colombia. COP means Conference of Party. So this summit will be happening every year or maybe 2 years, or based on that particular summit that will be happening. Okay, so COP means every parties will be coming together and they'll be discussing regarding what we can do next, or maybe what update we can give regarding that particular conference. So that is COP, or Conference of Parties. So this year the outcome was no agreement on financing mechanisms. No agreement on financing mechanism related to biodiversity, and it was falling short of $700 billion. So this was something which was decided as an annual need which is required for financing this biodiversity. So this was, no agreement was sanctioned regarding this. So why it was opposed? Developed nations resisted the financial commitments because they are saying that they had economic pressures due to the overall international economic issues. They had economic pressures. So that's what they said. While the developing countries, they demanded greater funding. They said this itself is not sufficient. We need more funding. Okay, so based on this, both the developing as well as developed countries, they were not able to come to a consensus regarding this. Okay, so based on that, that was a it is said that that was a failure. Okay, all right. Another important summit is UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCC. UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCC. Again, this was also one of the major summits which major conventions which originated at the 1992 Rio Earth Summit. Okay, so what was the purpose of this? They want to tackle the climate change by reducing the global warming. Okay, so that was the main purpose of this. So the latest target is they want to implement the global stocktake under the Paris Agreement, COP21. Okay, COP21, that is Paris Agreement. So in that 1.3 trillion was annually needed for the climate finance. Again, here also no binding agreement was there regarding this, and developing nations didn't agree on that. Okay, here also opposition was there. Divisions over phasing out fossil fuels and lack of accountability for high emission countries. Okay, so they are saying that there is a discrimination towards the developed countries. Okay, so that is one of the major things in which developed countries have been opposing. Another important summit is UNCCD, United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Okay, again this was also adopted in 1994. Again came during Rio Earth Summit only, but it was adopted in 1992. What is the purpose? To combat desertification and mitigate effects of drought in affected countries. Okay, so what is the purpose? They want to establish a legally binding protocol. It should be legally binding. Okay, most of the protocols are not legally binding, they are voluntary only. So they want to establish a legally binding protocol to combat drought and land degradation. Okay, so here also outcome was like discussions failed to produce this consensus and no protocol was adopted. Okay, so that was the problem. Why countries were opposing? African nations demanded specific economic commitments, while industrialized countries favored a general framework. Okay, so general framework means it will be mostly it should be adopted for every country, whether it be developed or whether it be LDC or whether it be developing country. Everyone will be having a general framework. Okay, so African countries demanded that they need a specific framework. Okay, all right. So based on that, again these countries were not able to reach a consensus in this. Another important convention is Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution. Okay, so this came much later in 2022. In 2022, a resolution at the United Nations Environmental Assembly in 2022. What is the focus? Developing a global treaty to address plastic pollution. Okay, we don't have a global treaty to address a plastic pollution. Here also the talks ended without the legally binding agreement. Here also we are not able to reach consensus to develop a global treaty on plastics. Okay, so the plastic dependent economies oppose the restrictions on production and they favoring recycling and waste management solutions instead. Okay, so they oppose restrictions on production, but instead what we can do, we can go for recycling and waste management solution. So this was the outcome, and again we are not able to reach consensus regarding the global plastic treaty. Okay, so based on that, the author is saying that all the four conventions, they failed to achieve the focus.
Now, Mr. Trump is very angry. He's saying that this Panama Treaty, which was brought in back in the history, that treaty is a foolish treaty. I don't like this treaty. And if required, USA is going to attack and take the control of Panama Canal completely. So, this topic is important for us because we want to know what is this Panama Canal. We want to know what is this Panama Canal Treaty. And this can be asked in your prelims as well as mains to some extent. There is high chance that for prelims it is relevant. You should know some factual information related to Panama and Panama Canal. Now you can look at this previous year question. Please, I request all of you to read this question. So if you read such questions, you will get an idea that many a times questions are asked which are very much factual in nature and which are related to the mapping part. So you should know about the maps in the international arena. So here they are talking about Malacca Strait, they are talking about this Kra Isthmus. You should know all these things. Okay. Now moving forward, what has happened? So recently Donald Trump threatened on December 22, 2024. Now first of all, they have threatened the country called Panama. We're talking about a country which is located in the Central Pacific region. So if you look at this world map, here you see North America, here you see South America. Here you have Europe and the other side we have Asia, and here you will be having Africa. Now we are talking about this region. Now here we have Pacific Ocean, this side we have Atlantic Ocean. And if you look at this region, this smaller part over here, here you see the country called Panama. Okay, so interestingly, whenever there is a smaller land which connects two different waters or two large waters or oceans, we call that area as strait. So this is Strait of Panama, we can say. Or if there is any land, a very small land which is connecting two large land masses, for example here South America and North America, we call that region as isthmus. So here we say Panama as a country is located on the isthmus of Panama, right? So it is here in the Central American region. Now this country is very interesting. Now if we want to know the factual part related to Panama, you should know the bordering countries too, because many times UPSC asks about bordering countries. So this is Panama. On the western side, it has border which is sharing with Costa Rica. On the eastern side, the border is shared with Colombia. Here on the above, on the northern side, we have Caribbean Sea. In the southern side, we have Pacific Ocean. This much factual information you must know. Now moving ahead, the capital of Panama is Panama City, and the language, the official language spoken in this country is Spanish. If you look at the demographics, the population living over here, it is very much diverse. It includes the indigenous people of this region, as well as Europeans, as well as Afro-Caribbeans, and there are many other people too. So a very diverse population is staying in this small country. Okay, now this was all about Panama. Now we are going to talk about Panama Canal. Now a canal, when we say canal, it's a waterway. It's a simple waterway. And this canal is not a natural one. It is artificially developed. Means in reality or in earlier times, if you see, this North America and South America, they are completely connected with the land. But we have cut this land and made a passage, made a small passage which we call as a waterway. So you can imagine earlier when a trade has to take place, let's say someone is moving from one part of North America, let's say you are here on the eastern side of USA and you want to send your package or your goods to this part of America, that is the western part. So how would you go? You had to travel from this line from South America and then you have to go here. So it was a very long distance. But what we did is we have made an artificial passage, waterway over here at Panama. Because of which now you don't need to travel such a long distance. Rather you can directly move from here and go to this other side. Right? So Panama Canal, it's an artificial waterway of total 80 kilometers. And this waterway or the canal was built by United States of America. Now this was built in the duration of 1904 to 1940. Around 10 years it took to build this entire what we call canal. And why USA built it? Because it was very important for USA. You can say it's not just USA but for the entire world. This Panama Canal is strategically very important. Now there is one other canal too named Suez Canal, which is very important for India. Similarly for USA, this one is important. If you look at the entire world trade, entire global maritime trade, 6% of that takes place from Panama Canal. And if you look at USA, it's highly important for USA because in the year 2021, a report came which said that 73% of the ships which were traveling from this Panama Canal, they were either going to USA or they were coming from USA. That means you can understand how much important this Panama Canal is for USA. If someone stops this canal, USA will feel very insecure and they might even attack that country militarily. Right? So, the point is USA built it. And from 1914, when it was completely built, from that year till 1999, in this phase, this canal was under the control of United States of America. It was not under the control of Panama government. And interestingly, in this time period, there were many protests against the US domination over there. So after many protests, a treaty was signed, Torrijos-Carter treaties. Now this includes multiple treaties. One treaty was Panama Canal Treaty, one was Permanent Neutrality Treaty. Under this treaty, it was decided that USA is going to transfer the control or ownership of this Panama Canal to this Panama country. US will not have it. And it will be transferred by the year 1999. So it was transferred? Yes, it was transferred. But see, there is another treaty too, Permanent Neutrality Treaty. That is very important. The clauses in this treaty clearly say that Panama will remain completely neutral. That means this Panama Canal which is there, it will be used by all the countries around the world. It will not happen that Panama will just allow one country to use it and will not allow other countries to use it. This will never happen. They will have to be very much neutral. And in case Panama does not remain neutral, in that case, USA has a right to defend for its neutrality. That means if Panama is not neutral, then USA will directly attack militarily on this country. So right now what Donald Trump is saying, first of all, I don't like this treaty that you transferred control to them. It was US's canal. And secondly, we can go against you or we can attack you. So this is all the controversy surrounding Panama.
Scorpion class submarine among 3 frontline platforms to be inducted by Navy on Jan 15. Okay, so here we will be discussing regarding 3 of the India's naval ships: INS Vagsheer, INS Surat, INS Nilgiri. Okay, GS paper 3, indigenization of technology, science and technology. Okay, all right, we'll see a previous year question in this regard. Which one of the following is the best description of INS Ashtadharani that was in the news recently? Okay, so the names are important. The names are important, and you have to know what kind of a vessel is that, whether it's an aircraft carrier, whether it's a frigate, whether it's a corvette. So that you have to know. Okay, especially from the prelims point of view. Or like I've already mentioned, this is a context. Indian Navy is set to commission 3 advanced platforms: INS Vagsheer, INS Surat and INS Nilgiri. Okay, so this INS Vagsheer is actually a Scorpion class. It's a Scorpion class submarine. Scorpion class submarine. Okay, another one is INS Surat. INS Surat. INS Surat is a stealth destroyer. It's a stealth destroyer. Okay, another one is INS Nilgiri. INS Nilgiri. So this is a stealth frigate. This is a stealth frigate. Okay, so all these things will be commissioned on Jan 15, 2025 at the Naval Dockyard in Mumbai. Okay, all right. So you have to understand what these things are. What is a Scorpion? What is a destroyer? What is a frigate? So all these things you have to understand. Okay, so we'll see what is the difference between these. Okay, so here you can see that some of the naval ships here you can see. So this is an aircraft carrier. Okay, this is an aircraft carrier. Regarding the aircraft carrier, they are like air bases. They are like air base. So what will happen in an air base? So the flights will be coming, like jets will be coming in. They'll be landing. They'll be landing in the runway, right? So here the aircraft carrier itself is providing a runway. So you can imagine how big it will be. Okay, but still the problem is we cannot the portability of this aircraft carrier will be less. It will be moving slowly, and also we will not be able to dock it everywhere. So that is one of the problem with this aircraft carrier. India has very less, even every country will be having very less number of aircraft carriers only. Okay, so for that, to increase the portability of this naval ships, we have another important category, that is a cruiser. So this is the second largest warship after the aircraft carrier. So they will be having their own missile guided systems will be there and also yeah, all this kind of systems will be there in this. Okay, another category is destroyer. Okay, so slightly smaller than the cruiser. So we have aircraft carriers, after that we have the cruisers, and after that we have the destroyer. So they are little more slightly smaller than the cruisers. Okay, but again they will also be providing the, they will also be having the missile technology, this radars and maneuvering, everything will be there in this destroyer. Again little more, slightly more lesser in size, we have the frigates. Okay, so advantage is like frigates compared to this aircraft carriers, cruisers will be more, will be able to take it to more places. Okay, coming to the frigates, we can easily take it to smaller areas also. All right, again little more smaller in size, we have the corvettes. Okay, same purpose only, but little more smaller. Okay, especially for this patrolling purpose and all, we'll be using this corvette. So after that we have the submarines. Okay, so whether it be the aircraft carrier, whether it be the frigate, whether it be the corvette, this is working in the surface level. Okay, submarines will be working in the under surface level. In the deep sea level, the submarines will be working. Okay, all right, now we have got an idea regarding what is the difference between all these things. So let's move on to the ships which were in the news, naval ships which were in the news. So regarding INS Vagsheer, INS Vagsheer is the sixth submarine of the first batch of six Calvary class submarine. Okay, so we have a class of submarines known as a Calvary class. So this is designed in the on base of the Scorpion class. Okay, Scorpion class is something India was relying on the France Navy. Okay, French naval group will be there. So they were only supplying the Scorpion. So based on that, we also started something similar, that is a Calvary class submarines. Okay, and we have named the project as Project 75. So in this Project 75, we have designed a lot of Calvary submarines. Okay, so these are diesel electric. These are diesel electric. Both diesel as well as electric technology is being utilized in this Calvary class submarines. Okay, all right. So we have developed it in collaboration with naval group of the France. Okay, in India it is a Mazagon Dock Shipyard Shipbuilders Limited in Mumbai. So this will be commissioned in Jan 15, 2025. Okay. So regarding this Calvary class submarines, we have more submarines in this. One is INS Calvary itself, commissioned in 2017. Another one Kanderi, INS Kanderi, commissioned in 2019. INS Karanch, commissioned in 2021. Again in 2021 we have INS Vela, and 2023 we have INS Vagsheer, and now again one more will be added, that is INS Vagsheer. The features will be stealth technology will be used. What do you mean by stealth technology? Stealth technology means these vessels that will be invisible to the radar. Okay, that will be invisible to the opponents or enemies radar. So that is stealth technology, and obviously this will be having multi-role capabilities. Multi-role capabilities means what? It can attack from it can attack a target in the land, it can attack a target in the target in the space, as well as it can attack a target in the sea itself. Okay, so that is multi-role capability of a vessel. Alright. Next one is INS Surat. Next one is INS Surat. So this is the fourth and final stealth destroyer under Project 15B. Okay. So project we already know what is a destroyer. Okay. Already know what is a destroyer. So first we have the aircraft carriers will be there. After that cruisers will be there. After that we have the destroyers will be there. Okay. Again, this project we have named this as Project 15B, and we have the class of destroyers, that is a Visakhapatnam class of destroyers. Okay, Visakhapatnam, earlier it was Kalvari class, now this is Visakhapatnam class of destroyers. So they are also having this stealth guided technology. Okay, so they are also having this stealth technology, and here also they can involved in anti-air warfare, anti-surface warfare, and anti-submarine warfare. Okay, for all these things it can be used. Anti-air means it can attack an opponent in the, or maybe a target in the air. Anti-surface means in the surface, and anti-submarine means under sea also it can attack. Okay, all right. So, and also another important thing is it is capable of housing helicopters such as Chetak, Dhruv, Seeking, and MH-60R. Aircraft carriers, they can actually even provide the runway for the aircraft. Okay, so here it can house a helicopter. From here itself, the helicopters can be take off. Okay, all right. So that is INS Surat. Next one is INS Nilgiri. Next one is INS Nilgiri. So this is the first frigate, stealth frigate under Project 17. So Project 17 is something which we be using to develop advanced stealth frigate. Okay, you know what is a frigate, right? So little more smaller ones we call it as a frigate. Okay, so again here also you can see the multi-role capabilities will be there. It can operate in different areas. Okay, so these are the 7 ships which are already commissioned under this INS, already commissioned under Project 17A. Okay, INS Nilgiri, which will be commissioned now, INS Himagiri, INS Udayagiri, INS Dunagiri, INS Taragiri, INS Vindhagiri, and INS Mahendragiri. Okay, so these are the frigates which are commissioned under Project 17A.